Well, hello, hello. Fairy Freak, you are right there ready and waiting today. You are bright and early. How is everybody? Looks like it'll take a couple more seconds to get some more people joining in our live stream today, but welcome, welcome. How are you? What is everybody doing today? I'm just getting a couple of table towels cut up here and ready to go for our demo. Get my nail ready here in just a second. Nicole McCarthy, you're excited for the live today. Are you excited just in general, or are you excited because I'm going to show you guys a tip application today? I know it's not a usual design or a usual style that I do, but we're going to change it up today. We're gonna do some things that, yeah, I don't normally demo. So that way, those of you that do work with tips, you guys will get a little bit more information, give you guys a little bit more education on how to apply tips. And today we're actually going to be applying the tip with our tip and jewel adhesive. So with a gel rather than just the regular glue or adhesive. So we've got some fun things coming up here. So just going to finish cutting up a few more towels here. Actually, I think I've got enough for today. We'll set those off to the side. And let me trim down my nail here really quick. But again, welcome in everybody. Let's see, Life with a Tuxedo, glad you caught a live. I'm glad you caught a live too. I'm glad that you guys are all here. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Just gonna trim up my nail here, get that ready to go, and then we will get started. All right. Give our nail a little bit of a shape. And you guys, when you're working on the trainer hands, you kind of have to do things just a little bit differently than, say, when you're working on a real client. So I'm going to show you kind of some tips and tricks today with working with the tips. But there's going to be, like I said, some things that may be a little bit different when you're working on a trainer hand versus when you're working on a real person. But first things first, we're going to do our prep. And the prep, whether we're working on a real person or we're working on our trainer hand, it's always going to be the same. So let me readjust here, get you guys a good camera view. There we go. So whatever you're working on, whether it's the trainer hand or your real clients, make sure that you get in the habit and practice going through and pushing back that cuticle just to make sure that you stay in that habit. I think a lot of times when people are working and kind of practicing on their trainer hands, sometimes they forget to do all of those other little odds and ends of steps that maybe don't necessarily make that much of a difference on the trainer hand, like pushing back the cuticles. But if you don't do that when you're training and practicing on the trainer hands, you tend to forget to do that when you're working on a real person. So that's why, like I said, even though we don't really have a whole lot of cuticle to be pushing back, still at least go through that motion of it and stay in that habit. All right, I've got my Mandrel on my electric file here. We're going to put a brand new sanding band on. And I always put a new sanding band on whether I'm working on myself, whether I'm working on a real other client, or whether I'm working on the trainer hand, because this way you're always going to have that really good grit and that new bit to do the proper filing. So again, whether you're working on yourself or your trainer hands or your clients, always have a new sanding band on there. Don't try to use one that is worn down. Okay, you can definitely see the difference between the one that's worn down and the new one that's got the proper grit to it. Okay. All right, we're going to turn our E-file to about 5,000 RPMs. And we'll come right there. And I'm going to work right up around that cuticle in just kind of short little, kind of rounded kind of motions here, just to work right up into that cuticle area. And then I'm going to just feather my bit all the way through the surface of that natural nail, just gently. You guys, I'm barely just making contact. I'm not applying any pressure, just making contact with that nail and then coming through that whole nail surface to make sure that, again, I've kind of given that nail a little bit of texture and also broken up the oils in the surface of the nail. And then we're going to grab our manicure brush. I'm going to dust that nail, get all of that dust cleaned off of there, pulling that dust down out of those sidewalls down on the side of the nail. I'm not brushing across because brushing across is just going to basically push that dust down into those sidewalls. By brushing downward this way, I'm going to actually pull that dust out of those sidewalls. Okay, kind of dusting off all the way around. If you need to, coming underneath that free edge to kind of dust that off and clean that up. Okay. All right, we're going to go into our cleanser. So swipe is what we're going to use to cleanse the nail. Looks like it's almost time for me to refill my bottle, so I'll probably get to that either today or tomorrow. But we are going to be using our swipe. I'm going to pump a little bit of that onto my manicure brush. Now you guys, you can use the lint-free wipes if you prefer. So you could pump a little bit of that onto the lint-free wipe, and then you can use that to go in and scrub that nail clean. But I will tell you, using the brush is going to be much easier for you, because by pumping that onto your brush, you can just come through and you can scrub that nail clean, and you're not going to have to worry about using extra lint-free wipes or anything like that. You're also going to avoid getting that swipe on your fingers. If you were using the lint-free wipe and scrubbing, that swipe is going to start to get onto your fingers and onto your skin, and you can kind of see, if I come in a little closer, you see how it kind of has started to dry out my skin. I had just a little bit of that swipe on there, not even really a whole lot, but just that little bit of swipe will dry out your skin. So that's one of the big reasons that I actually like to use my manicure brush instead of the wipes. Okay? All right, let's grab our protein bond, and we're going to apply 2 coats of protein bond. Now, protein bond is our bonder. It's not a primer, so we're not using an acid primer. We're using our non-acid bonder, and this is going to work more like a double-sided tape. So this is going to stick down to that natural nail, but then it's going to leave a sticky surface. And I'm going to get that up close to my cuticle, as close as I can without touching, and then just kind of blending that through the rest of the nail. Okay? We're going to do 2 coats of the protein bond because we are going to be doing an enhancement, and we're actually going to be putting our tip on with a gel. So if you were going to be adhering your tip with just a traditional glue or traditional adhesive, let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So if you were, oops, wrong one. I thought I had a glue in here, but I guess I didn't. But you guys, if you're using just a regular air dry glue to adhere your tips, make sure that you're waiting on this step. Don't apply your protein bond until after you've applied your tip with the adhesive. But since we're using our tip and Jewel Adhesive Gel, we want to make sure that we are getting that, that protein bond underneath this to adhere our tip with. Okay, and that'll make a little bit more sense as we get into that application. So let's go ahead and get to that point. And you guys, at this point, normally you see me grab the forms and get that form up under there. So we're doing something a little different. We're changing it up a little bit today. So we're going to be using the tips. And again, the tips that I've got here, these are the extra long square no-well tips. So these ones, I feel like this is kind of the really trendy style that is kind of out there in the nail world right now. So what these are, let me see if I can get a little closer so you can get a better view on them. They're a very long, obviously an extra long, straight square nail. So these are going to have those completely square, completely straight lower arches right down through there. Really nice tight C curve if you look down from the end. Okay. Now here's the challenge, you guys. If you take a look at the C curve of these tips, does that look like your normal natural C curve? You guys, just kind of on your own here. I know that you guys are watching here, but take a look at your own C curve. If you look at your own C curve from straight down the end, I want you to put in the chat, does your C curve look exactly like this C curve? Is your C curve that curved, or do you have more flat nails? Let me know in the chat. Do you have this tight C curve, or do you have flatter nails? I want to know. I want to see where you guys are at. Renee says, nope, mine is flatter, Pixel Pixie. Nope, more flat, absolutely not so flat. You guys see, this is the challenge when you're working with tips. Tips tend to be what I call a one size fits most, and not every tip is going to fit on every nail shape, which is one of the reasons that I do prefer to use the forms and I sculpt the nails. This form I can really perfect and get that under any nail shape, any nail, kind of a flat nail or a curved nail. The forms I feel like are a little bit easier to customize, but if you are stuck on working with tips, you guys, they can be a great tool, but you do need to know how to size them. And from the look of the chat, you guys, it's looking like a lot of you have those more flat nails. So I'm going to show you how I would size these and I would customize them, okay? So again, you guys, when you're working on the trainer hands are a little bit tricky to work with in using tips, but I'm going to show you how you're going to do this, and hopefully this will make sense and give you guys a little bit more insight to when you're working on a real client, okay? Now, if I take this tip, so this one that I've got, this is a size 3. I'm kind of just looking at that little number on the end, so that's a size 3. If I hold this up, and I'm going to try to get you guys to be able to see this. Do you see how when I put that tip onto that nail, it's definitely going to be, let me see from a different angle. If I put that on there from the sides here, I would have to press this tip down to really get that to sit flat on the nail, okay? Now, this is a big challenge because like you guys are showing in the chat there, a lot of people do have those more flat nails. So what you kind of sometimes have to do is you actually may have to size out to a different size to make sure that the well is fitting on that nail versus the C curve. So I always start sizing my tips by the well first and the C curve of that nail first, okay? So what I mean by that is, let me see, so this was a size 3. Actually, let me just go to a really big size. So this is a size 0. We've got size 0 in our box of tips here. So if we take a look at these, you guys, hopefully you can see, you're going to be able to see that the larger size actually has a little bit more of a flat area through here versus the smaller size has less of a flat area. Okay, does that make sense so far, you guys? Let me put a little thumbs up in the chat if that's making sense. So with a larger tip, you've got a little bit of a flatter surface through the well. And with a smaller tip, you have a little bit more curve to it, okay? Good, I'm starting to see some thumbs up in the chat, that's good. So when you're sizing tips on a flat nail, you may have to go to that bigger size to get that well to fit onto that natural nail. And then you can actually cut off or customize those sides to make sure that the tip is going to fit from side to side, okay? Awesome, lots of thumbs up in the chat. That is fantastic because you guys, making sure that the well of your tip or that contact area sits flat and flush onto the nail is a really important thing, especially if you're using the glue. Now, we're going to be using, like I was saying before, we're going to be using our Tip and Jewel Adhesive Gel. This is a little bit thicker than the glue. So with this, you can actually size out and not have to worry so much about having that well perfect contact to that natural nail. Because this is a little bit thicker, it can fill in a little bit more. And again, this will make a little bit more sense when I actually get some nails on here. But I'm going to go to, let's see, we had a size 3, and that was, whoops, where's my size 3? That was a size 3, and I was feeling like that just wasn't quite the right size. Now, with these tips, I'm going to show you, they are fairly flexible. So if I do kind of give them a press down, they do kind of flex and bend a little bit. But what do you notice that when I let go of that? What do you notice happens? You see that that actually kind of comes back to its original shape. So again, if I press that C-curve flat, that's going to come back to its original shape. That's, again, why we need to make sure that we're finding that right C-curve to fit our natural nail. Okay, it's going to spring back. Yep, Renee, you are right on track there. So that is going to spring back, and it's going to have a tendency to want to pop back up. So that's why it's really important that we are getting that, that tip adhered flush down to that natural nail. Okay, so I'm actually going to go to a size 4. I think a 4 might be kind of where we're going to look for this nail. Now, this one, you guys, you're going to see that this one, I do have to put a little bit of pressure. There's a little bit of a gap right underneath there, kind of right in between. But with this size 4, if I put just a tiny little bit of pressure, I think that's going to be okay. All right. Now, I want to show you something else. What happens if you choose a really small size? And you guys, I'm going to over exaggerate this just so you guys can really see. But if I were to choose a really small size and try to put that tip on, do you see how that really flares out into these corners? Okay, if that is really flaring out, that's not going to adhere very well, and this is really going to want to pop back up. So again, you want to make sure that that tip is going to sit kind of flush down, or not kind of, but flush down onto that natural nail without flaring too much at the sides. Now again, this one it's flaring out just a tiny little bit, and it's kind of overhanging. You can kind of see, let me come in a little bit closer. But if I put that on, it's kind of flared out, so you can see just a little bit flared out through here, but then it's hanging off the edge just a little bit. Let me make sure this is even from side to side. So see how much that's hanging off the edge now? I think this one's going to be good to fit our C curve, but because it's hanging off the edge, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take my straight edge toenail clipper, and I'm going to take just a little bit off of the edges here. So just a little bit, and I'm not coming straight out from there just yet. I'm just kind of at a slight angle, okay, just very slight. I don't want to take off too much. So you can see how I kind of trimmed that edge just a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And again, we're just going to kind of trim that just slightly. So again, you can kind of see that's just at a slight angle right where my nail is going to have contact. So now you can see that it's going to come, if I hold that all the way from the edge to the edge, you can see how it's coming right to the edge of the nail, all the way over to the edge right through here. Now again, there is some hanging off here. I'm not going to worry about that just yet, but now we've got that nail that is with just a tiny little bit of pressure, not much, you guys, not much pressure at all. It's going to sit flat and flush onto that nail, and it's going to come from side to side without hanging off the edges, okay? So that's how we're going to size out these square, extra long square, no well tips. Now, I say no well tips because they don't have kind of that traditional contact area in the back. So really, you can apply this tip wherever you want to. You could put this right at that edge, right there, just barely overlapping. You can apply it a little farther back. You can apply it this far back. I probably wouldn't apply that far back. I tend to apply my tips from probably here to back about here. And the thing that you want to remember is you want to make sure that you're having more of that natural nail open to put your product on rather than your adhesive, okay? So you're going to get the better bond with your acrylic over that whole nail, and you're going to be able to build the structure if you don't have that tip all the way that far back, okay? All right, so because we have a no well tip and we are using a gel to adhere this, I need to make sure that I'm removing the shine from the underneath side, so that contact area where I'm going to adhere that. If I left this shiny surface under here, my gel is not going to adhere. So to create that a little bit more of a textured surface, I'm going to go back to my sanding band. So that same one that I used to prep the nails, still at about 5,000 RPMs, I'm just going to come in and just kind of tap in through wherever I want to adhere the nail to, okay? So just that area, oops, sorry guys, there we go. So just that area that I'm going to adhere onto the nail, I'm going to remove the shine. So you don't have to do a ton of filing, just a little bit to kind of texturize that surface so that it's going to have a really good bond to that adhesive gel, okay? I'm going to grab my brush. I'm just going to kind of dust that out, make sure that there's no more dust in there, make sure that all of that dust is cleaned out. And I'm just going to check this one last time. Now that I can see a little bit better because I've got that kind of that textured surface, I just kind of go through and check one more time just to make sure everything's looking like it's going to fit. And I think we're ready to go. We do have just a tiny little bit of dust still on that natural nail. Just wanted to make sure to get rid of that. All right, now I do want to show you guys something else that I've got on my table here. This is our, let me get that into camera. This is our touch cure light. So when you touch that, it turns on the light. You can see there's a little light coming out. This is a curing light. When you touch that end, it'll turn on or turn off. I like to have this one handy because when I'm putting these tips on with the gel, I want to have that nail right underneath there. So this way I can turn that light on, freeze this nail into place so that that tip isn't going to move or anything like that, okay? So just something to have near your station or at your station when you're applying the tips with the Jewel Adhesive Gel. All right, let me grab my All right, so you guys, this is the tool that I'm going to use. This is our dual-ended spatula and brush, or brush and spatula, I guess. So we've got the brush on one end, we've got the little spatula on the other end. And this is what I like to use when I'm working with my tip and jewel adhesive, because this works really good for scooping out that adhesive. And then if you need to, you can kind of use the brush maybe to kind of maneuver things around a little bit. So I do tend to see people that, I'm going to grab a different tip here just because this is the one that I'm going to use and I don't want to gunk it all up. But a lot of times I do see people and they will take their tip and they'll scoop down in there to scoop out the adhesive. Now you guys, I can't really get a good kind of a wipe off the edge there because these tips have such, hopefully you guys were able to see that. So again, I don't like to scoop in there because you can see it doesn't quite get that kind of clean release on that edge because we've got such a rounded edge to our tip, okay? So that's one of the reasons that I like to use the spatula. So with the spatula, I'm going to take a little scoop here. Let me find a nice clean area on the edge there. So I'm going to take a little scoop, and you don't need a lot of this gel, okay? Because this is a very thick gel. Another reason that I don't like to scoop in is because a lot of times if I scoop in, I get gel over the back side of the tip, and I just want to make sure that I'm keeping my gel on the front side, or I guess on the contact area of the tip, so that way it's not going to be creating a mess. So I'm just going to scrape a little bit of that gel onto the contact area, and then I'm going to use that spatula to just kind of spread this out from side to side, making sure that I create contact all the way up onto those little points, so right up into those little corners there. We'll set this aside. Somebody's asking, is that glue in a jar? You guys, this is our tip and jewel adhesive. So you can use this for applying the tips like we're showing you today, or you can also use it for adhering your jewels and rhinestones and things like that. So again, you guys, I'm just getting my little touch cure light ready to go in place here, just so I have that. Now, when I'm applying the tip, I start at kind of a downward angle. So I start about here. Come in a little bit closer so you can really see what's happening. So I start at kind of that downward angle, and then I'm going to over exaggerate this, but I'll slide that tip down until that gel and the nail connect, and then I'm going to rock that tip down so that it's flush onto the nail, okay? Somebody's saying where to order. You guys, all of the products that I'm working with today are Young Nails, so youngnails.com is where you can find all of these products. Okay, so again, we're going to start at that downward angle. I'm going to slide that tip down until you're going to be able to see that gel kind of connect to that natural nail. Okay, do you see how it's connecting now? Then I'm just going to gently rock that nail down, just kind of slow. And you're going to see some of that gel is going to squeeze out, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. But I am going to kind of check. So I'm going to check from side to side, making sure my tip is in the proper place that I want it. I'm going to just hold it right there with my nail because I can't quite reach my light. I'm going to turn that light on. I'm going to get that nail right under the light, and I'm just going to hold it here for a few seconds. I would say maybe up to 10 seconds or so, just to really set that tip into place. And then we'll get this into the full cure light, okay? So again, we've got that into place. Now you guys, I'm going to back my camera up because I really want you to see something. For here on filming, I do have the light fairly close. It's probably, I would say, about 2 to 3 inches away from the nail. If you're working on a real hand, I would say probably keep the light maybe about 6 inches away or so. That way it's not going to create too much heat on that natural nail, okay? So, but again, for demo purposes, I do get a little bit closer so that way you guys can see everything on camera. But again, this is going to go in there for about 10 to 20 seconds or so, or just enough to kind of set it into place. We'll turn that off. If you were doing a full set, so what I would do is I would adhere one nail, then I would cure it. I would adhere my second nail, cure it, do my third nail, cure it, fourth nail, cure it, fifth nail, cure it. After you've gone through and done those quick freezes on the nail, so that 10 to 20 seconds, all of these nails or all of these tips are kind of set into place. They're not moving, but they're not fully cured. So after I kind of freeze those tips on all of the fingers, Then I would go into my light for a full 60 seconds. So that's what I'm gonna do here. So you guys can see, let me back my camera out. So now I'm gonna put that hand into the light for a full 60 seconds to really give that a permanent, kind of a solid cure, okay? You wanna make sure that you're doing that because we're gonna be doing a little bit of filing on this nail, and if that gel isn't completely cured out, it has a tendency to maybe wanna pop back off because it's not completely adhered, okay? So 60 seconds in the light here. And while that's happening, I am going to switch my bits. So what we're going to do, we're going to switch from our sanding band. We're still going to need this in just a little bit, but we're going to go to our safety bit coarse. I'm going to leave that out just a little bit there. And then, okay, I think our nail looks like that is done. So at this point, our gel is cured. You can see there was a little bit that squeezed out, and that's totally fine. We're going to take care of that in just a second here. But at this point, if you need to shorten up that nail, you can shorten it. You can either use a tip cutter, which is what I'm going to use here today. We're going to shorten that up. Let me bring that camera out so you can see what I'm doing. So again, I'm going to shorten that tip up just by using my tip cutters. Or if you guys don't have the tip cutters, you can grab a toenail clipper. And what I would say with the toenail clipper is to start on one side, do a clip on one side, come back over to the other side, clip on the other side. If it didn't cut all the way across, just twist that little piece on the end, and that will help to trim that and shorten that up for you, okay? All right, you guys, are you learning anything today? If you are learning something today, if you're enjoying the live stream, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It just helps us to be able to give you guys more free education. So the more you guys subscribe, the more education we can give you. All right, so we've got our tip on there. It's not going anywhere. That gel is cured out, but we don't want to leave that gel on there. So what I'm going to do, I've got my safety bit here. I'm going to turn the speed on my e-file up to, I would say, about 10,000 RPMs. And before I do that, I'm also going to grab my dust collector. I always want to make sure that I'm working with my dust collector, whether it's for prep, or actually not really for prep, I don't use that, but for doing my tips or for my filing and finishing. This way I can turn that on. Let me turn that back around here. Turn that on, and this way all of that dust that I'm filing is going to go right down into that dust collector. So again, we're going to turn our e-file on to about 10,000 RPMs. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to thin out and remove some of that gel. Now you guys, I want you to see this. I want you to kind of see where my bit is positioned, because a lot of times when people blend their tips, I feel like people do too much filing on that natural nail, and we don't want to be filing on the natural nail. So I'm going to turn my e-file actually off here. If you take a look at my bit, do you see how there's grit right up to here, but then there's that rounded area? I don't want my bit and that grit part of my bit to go any farther past that gel. I don't want it all the way back here, so I'm not trying to file like this. I'm just filing right through here. If my bit goes any farther past that gel, I'm going to end up filing on that natural nail and causing damage. I do not want to be doing that. So when I'm filing, I'm keeping my bit positioned right on top of that product. And we're just going to just kind of thin that out a little bit, remove that extra product, and then we're going to bevel this down to that natural nail. Now, depending on what you're putting over this nail is going to kind of change up your blending. If you are just doing a solid color overlay, maybe you're using an opaque color, you don't necessarily have to make sure this is blended perfectly. If you are doing like maybe a pink and white or something where, again, your product is going to cover that line, you don't necessarily have to make sure this is blended perfectly. But I always like to go through and blend this out as best as I can, so that way when I put my product down, my product is going to flow all the way through the length of the nail, and it's not going to get stuck right at that ledge, okay? So again, depending on what you're going to be doing over the top, you may or may not have to do as much blending as what I'm doing here. But I still like to go through, blend that out as best as I can. And I think we're getting there. I think I have just a little bit more of that gel that I want to make sure I get cleaned off. But again, you guys, make sure that you're not going past where that product is, okay? It's very tempting to want to use more of this part of your bit to take that product down. But again, if you're going this far back with that carbide part of your bit on that natural nail, it's going to do damage. So make sure that you're keeping the teeth of the bit on the product and not on that natural nail. And again, you guys, I'm also working kind of like we were working around that cuticle in short little strokes. I'm not trying to just grind all the way across this nail, because if I did try to just go all the way across like that, first of all, I may take off too much product, but second of all, those longer, kind of more firm strokes across there is probably going to build up heat and cause that heat sensation or burn your client, okay? So we want to, again, make sure that we're going in those slower motions. Now, we've got this pretty well blended. I took down a good amount of that bulk, but I do want to finish blending this out. So I'm going to switch back to my sanding band. So again, that same bit that we were using to prep the nail. And we're just going to go through. I'm going to turn my speed down now to about 5,000 to 6,000 RPMs. And we're going to go through just like we were prepping that natural nail, kind of in those feathering motions. Okay. Again, I don't want my bit going past where that product is, because again, I don't want to be filing on that natural nail. I don't want to be causing any extra damage or anything on that natural nail. So again, just kind of feathering through. Guys, I'm trying to make sure that I stay on camera, but I need to turn this a little bit. There we go. All right. Let's come there. Okay. All right. You guys, this is one of the reasons that I always say trying to demo the tip application on camera is very challenging, because I do kind of use different angles as I work. So it is a little bit trickier, but I do want to make sure that I am showing you guys everything that I can. All right, I think we're good with our blending. Now, if you are working with a gel overlay, you absolutely have to make sure to go through and remove the rest of the shine from this whole entire nail. If you're doing a gel overlay, gel is not going to stick to that shiny surface, so you want to make sure that you're completely removing that shine from that nail surface. And you're going to be prepping this nail just like you did the natural nail, kind of in those feathering motions. Now today we are going to be working with acrylic. So if I do leave that, that nail shiny, it's not a huge deal, but I still like to go through, remove the shine, because I do feel like it's going to give me a little bit better adhesion. Okay, so that's why we went through, remove the shine. All right, let's get that out of the way. And I'm going to dust this nail off, and we're going to take a quick look at this. So earlier, we kind of trimmed off a little bit of that tip from the side here before we adhered that. Now, if we take a look, you can see how much of that edge is still hanging down, okay? So to clean that up, I can do one of two things. I can either file that all away now, or I could file it away at the end, or I can take my straight edge toenail clippers. And that's what I'm going to do, because I want to make this a little bit easier. So I'm actually going to clip off a little bit of that edge so that I don't have as much filing to do at the end. Now you can see that I'm not going to be able to get all the way back up into that corner. My toenail clipper kind of catches on the finger down here, so I will have to do a little bit of filing there. But now do you see how much straighter out that free edge is? Okay. Also, if we take a look from that other side, okay, if we look from this side, let me move some things around here. If we look from this side, again, you guys, it looks like that that nail is angled downward. So again, we want to make sure that this is going to come more straight out from the nail. So again, I can come in here from the side, and we're going to just clip those edges off. So again, there's going to be less filing to do at the end. Now, is this a step that you absolutely have to do? No. But for me, I feel like clipping that off just makes it a little bit easier in the long run, so that I don't have as much filing to do at the end. Okay, just a personal preference, but you guys, I like to show you things that are going to make your life easier. Okay, easier and faster to do nails. All right, I think we're good there. I'm just going to grab my file here. We'll just kind of do a really quick kind of a rough shape on that. I'm not going to necessarily spend a ton of time to make that perfect, but I do just kind of like to give myself a little bit of an outline there. And then I can also catch kind of right around the edges here or anything else that may need just a tiny little bit more blending. I can just kind of touch that up with my hand file, because sometimes you're not able to get all of those little tiny areas with your electric file. Okay. All right, let's come in here so you guys can now see our nail is pretty much ready to do our overlay. I'm going to dust that off. Here's the thing though, you guys, as we've been working, I did hit my nail just once up there with my hand file. I may have gotten some other dust on this nail. I may have actually bumped that with my finger. So I want to make sure that I'm cleaning off this natural nail again. And it actually looks like there's a little bit of fuzz up on there too. So I want to make sure that I'm cleaning this nail off. I had to make sure that I had protein bond to adhere my gel. But now I'm going to clean the nail. We're going to remove whatever protein bond is on there because it's hanging on to all of this fuzzy stuff. But I'm not going to use my brush like I did last time with the swipe on the brush. I want to make sure that I'm keeping swipe away from the plastic tip because swipe has a little bit of acetone to it. And if you get too much of that acetone on that plastic tip, it can start to dissolve it. So what I do at this time is I will use those lint-free wipes. I'll take some swipe onto the lint-free wipe. I fold that in half, and then I come back through and I clean just that natural nail area. Okay, again, I don't want to get too much swipe on that free edge because if you do over swipe it or over cleanse it, you can start to kind of break down that plastic tip. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're not doing that. But we still need protein bond on that natural nail. So once that nail is dry, we're going to come back to our protein bond and we're going to do 2 more coats on that nail. Okay, we want to make sure that we've got that good adhesion with our protein bond, and we're going to start again at the center, kind of come back up to that cuticle area, come back to that cuticle area. Now, do I need to put protein bond on the rest of the extension? Not necessarily. Do I usually put protein bond on it? Yeah. I always say when in doubt, protein bond. That's kind of our motto around here. So when in doubt, protein bond. So if you feel like you need protein bond on that free edge, add some protein bond. It's just going to help. It's not going to hurt. Okay. Now I am going to do my second coat of protein bond just on the natural nail. On that free edge, on the tip part, it doesn't need any more protein bond. Okay. All right, you guys, at this point, everything else is just like we would be doing if we were sculpting a nail, okay? So for today's lesson, it was more about showing you guys how to put the tip on. So I'm not gonna really do anything too crazy with our overlay, but it is Valentine's coming up, so I did wanna use some kind of fun pinky purpley colors today. So we're just gonna do an easy design that you don't really have to think too much about. So what I've got, oh, let's see, what do I have? I've got my Speed Clear. That's going to be for for not for sculpting, you guys, for my overlay. Sorry, my brain stopped for a second. So that's going to be our structure and our overlay. And then the colors that I'm going to use in the design today are Core White, which is a little bit of a softer white. We're going to also use Cover Blush. Let me show you what this one is. I don't know if the camera will pick up those colors really well, but Cover Blush is a soft pink with a little bit of a shimmer to it. And I really love this one. I actually really like this one just for a regular overlay or a solid color. But for today, we're going to add it into our design. And then we've got 2 of our Slick Pour colors. We've got Bikini Blitz, and we've also got Raspberry Blitz. I wasn't sure that I wanted to use the purple in the nail today, but then I saw it and I was kind of like, yeah, maybe I do want to throw that in. So I originally was just going to go with the pink, but you guys, you get an extra color today, so we got that purple in there. And then our glitters for today that we've got are Crinkle Sprinkles, which are kind of those rectangular little threads of glitter. And then we've also got Bumpin', which is actually one of my favorite colors, especially with pinks and purples, because you can kind of see all of the different color reflections in there and a little bit more of the pink and purple. Those are the colors that I'm going to be using here with our nail. You guys, again, make sure if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, join our community. Welcome, welcome. And you guys, I see you. I see those of you that are subscribing, and I appreciate you. We appreciate you so much here at Young Nails. And this is why we give you so much free education. We want you to be successful with our product. So we are here to help support you and, yeah, give you free education. So subscribe and get all of that, all of the good stuff. All right, I'm gonna grab a few of those table towels. Those of you that were here bright and early into our live stream, you saw me cutting up my table towels. So it's the table towels that I've got on my station here. I just cut those up into smaller pieces so that they're a little bit easier for me to use. And I've got my brush, and today I'm using Greg's Signature Series brush. This is a size 12. You can see up there it's a size 12. And I really love this brush because you can come in a little closer here. You can see you can use this brush for picking up really tiny pearls just right on the point of the brush, or you can use it for picking up larger pearls. It is a great size brush, and you can use it for, like I said, those larger pearls, those smaller pearls, whatever you are doing. It's a great all-around brush. Now I've got my dappen dish here. This is one of our ceramic dappen dishes. I'm just going to clean that off. I'm going to soak up the rest of my monomer that was in there from before. I always like to make sure that I'm using clean, fresh monomer. So this way I'm going to get perfect pearls every time. I don't have extra little bits. You can see on my towel there's some glitter left in my glitter left in my dappen dish, so I wanted to make sure to clean that out. Looks like there still might be a little bit in there, but I'm not going to worry too much. But you always want to make sure that you're starting with clean, fresh monomer. So this way you're always going to be able to pick up that really good, consistent pearl. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and pour our liquid. And if you haven't seen me do this before, you've been missing out. But I always touch my brush to the top of my bottle. And this way it's going to pour right down my brush into my dappen dish without spilling or dribbling down the side of my bottle. All right. So for today's design, we're just going to kind of marble some colors together. Oh, let me open up my glitters here. Like I said, I wanted to give you more education today about applying the tips. So we're not going to go too crazy with our design, but we always got to have a little fun. Always have a little bit of glitter. Let me make sure you guys can see where we're at here. All right. So what I'm going to do to start with, because we're going to be using color or glitter on our nail, I want to put a little bit of a protective layer on that natural nail. So this is where that speed clear is going to come in. And I know you guys can't see what I'm doing here, but I want to stay nice and close in on the nail so that you can see the application. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up just a small little pearl. So just a small pearl of that speed clear. And I'm going to set that down onto that natural nail. Press that out to make sure that it's nice and thin. That's just going to kind of blend into our tip. So this is going to do a couple of different things. Do you see how that product really blended in? So now I can't see the seam of where my tip is versus where my product is. That's going to help my product kind of flow a little bit better when I'm doing my design. So that's one of the reasons that I put that on there. The other reason is because what we're going to do for our design is we're going to start to put color and glitter and all that different kind of stuff up on that natural nail. So I want to make sure that I have kind of a protective layer on that natural nail. So when I go to change out my design, it's not going to, I'm not going to file into that natural nail. Okay, so having that little bit of clear underneath there is going to give me just that protective layer to avoid any damage. And all I'm doing at this time is just picking up small, fairly wet pearls of all of those different colors that I was showing you guys. Just kind of setting them down there. And when I do this kind of a marble or kind of just a color blend, I really kind of work with the product a little bit more like a watercolor. You can kind of see how I'm just kind of tapping into it, not really painting, but kind of painting. So just kind of tapping in there, getting that product to kind of flow and just let it move on its own. And I think maybe just a little bit of pink right up top here. Again, just kind of letting that flow, pressing into that, getting that product to move on its own a little bit. And maybe just a little bit more pink right down in here. And you guys, this is where a lot of just the fun comes in. When you get to work with different colors and you can create your own designs. Does your design always have to look like mine? Absolutely not. You guys, just work with the colors, work with the products, and just make it what you want it, okay? Now, I'm going to add some of these confettis into a couple of different areas. And if my product is still wet, these glitters and these little confettis are going to set down into that wet acrylic. Now, there's going to be some areas where my acrylic is already starting to dry. So what I can do in that case is go back to my Speed Clear, take another small little bead of my Speed Clear, and just kind of fade that right over whatever area I want to apply that glitter. And it's just going to kind of re-wet that surface. And then I can pick up a little bit more of those glitters and kind of set those down in there. And you guys, all I'm doing is I'm basically just touching my brush to the glitter in the jar. And then my brush is just going to kind of grab onto those. And again, I can set those down into those little wet areas. And again, if I need to add a little bit more of that Speed Clear to kind of re-wet that surface, I can go ahead and do that. Pick up a little bit more of those glitters, tuck those wherever I feel like I need a little bit of sparkle. And maybe just a little bit more there. All right, you guys, like I said, I'm not going to go too crazy with our design, but I think we're going to be good with that. Maybe, do we need a little more purple? I feel like maybe we just need just a tiny little bit of purple, maybe right up through there. And then I think we're going to be all right. Nah, maybe I didn't like that purple up there. We'll take that off. You guys, sometimes you have to, I'm very much a visual person, so sometimes I really just have to see what that design is going to look like. And it's okay. If you need to take it off, you can always take those little bits and pieces off, or maybe just add something else on top of it. I think I'm going to add a little bit more of that clear, and then maybe just a little bit more of those confettis right up top there. It just needed a little something. So again, you guys, play with the colors and see what you like. See what happens and see where you want to put color. But again, you guys, I feel like I need more purple. Maybe right through here. There we go. Okay, I like how that is. Just kind of accented that a little bit. Yep, I like that. I think we're good. I am going to close up some of these colors and get them out of my way before we do our overlay. And when we do our overlay, that's where our Speed Clear is going to come in. But let me show you something here really quick. The reason that we need to overlay, a couple of different reasons. First of all, if we just left our nail like this and we went to file it, we would file off all of our glitter and all of our color. Okay, so we need to put an overlay over the top of this to cover our glitter and seal that in so that we don't file it off. But we also need to use that Speed Clear to create structure. Okay, so we're going to be using, again, our Speed Clear. Somebody's asking the name of the pink. The pink acrylic I was using is Bikini Blitz. And you guys, if you are not on our Discord server yet, make sure to also join us on that. I always like to post all of the different colors and glitters and everything that I'm going to be using in our live streams. I will post that before we go live. So that way you can kind of have an idea of what I'm going to be using, what colors I'm going to be working with, or what kind of a design I'm going to be doing. And then you can work along with me. So it's kind of fun. So join our Discord. And it looks like our moderator's got our link in there for that in the chat. All right, let's go back to our nail here. So I'm going to pick up a pretty good size of my Speed Clear. I'm going to set that right at my cuticle area, and you can kind of see how my nail is angled downward. I like to keep that nail angled downward, so this way my product is going to flow down the length of the nail. I can press out that cuticle area, get that cuticle area nice and thin, nice and flush, and then the product is just going to run and flow, and then I'll just blend that out. And it really did a lot of the work for me. I didn't have to do a lot of pressing or moving that product. It didn't flow down into the sides. It just came down the length of the nail. So by angling that finger straight down, that's going to help to get your product to move for you. Okay. Now, if we take a look from the side, we've got some of that structure coming in already now. We do need to add a little bit more product right through here into our free edge to fill in that space. So we'll do one more pearl. And this one I'm going to pick up and I'm going to just drain out a little bit of the liquid out of there. So just kind of tap it down onto my table towel. I'm going to turn that pearl or turn my brush around and blend that back. Now the reason that I drain out a little bit of that product is because this one I don't want it to flow quite as much. I want a little bit more, not quite a clay-like consistency, but just a little bit more thickness so I can really maneuver this and kind of position that product where I want it, okay? And I'm just gonna blend that through to the end. I just stuck my nail in there on that side there. All right, now I'm gonna take a look at this. I'm gonna blend this backwards. I just wanna pull a little bit more of that product up into my arch, but it looks like I still need just a little bit of product right at that free edge area. And I do want to show you guys something in just a second. So let me go ahead and show you. So when you're working with tips, you always have to remember, if you kind of take a look down the barrel of this nail, you always have to remember that you have that little extra layer of plastic, so that plastic tip under there. You have to remember that there's that extra layer of that plastic giving you thickness. Now, that plastic is not necessarily going to give you strength, so you have to make sure that you're building your product over the top thick enough to give you the strength, not just having that thin layer of the plastic tip, okay? I think that's a challenge that a lot of people tend to make, is they don't make their nails thick enough because they already have that thickness of the plastic. And again, you guys, you don't want thick nails, I understand that, but you have to make sure that you're always building your structure with your product, not your tip, okay? So make sure that you are applying enough of the acrylic to get your proper structure, okay? So I'm just gonna add one more pearl right here. And you guys notice that when I do longer nails like this, I may do a couple of extra pearls just to make sure to kind of fill in a little bit of extra space and things like that. It's okay. You don't have to do it in one solid pearl. And if you don't do it in one solid pearl, it's totally fine. Okay. All right. So at this point, we do need to let this nail set. You can see how shiny that is. You can see how that nail actually looks wet. But I'm going to close up my jars. But as this nail is setting up, we do want to pinch a little bit more of a C curve. Because we're working on those longer nails, we really want to make sure that it's going to have a nice structure to it. And pinching in a C curve is an important part of getting your good structure. So again, I'm going to close up my liquids and powders here, and then I'm going to show you how to pinch in that C curve. And you guys, I am waiting because, again, if you take a look, you see how it still looks kind of shiny and wet. We have to make sure that the product isn't wet, but it's still pliable. So it's kind of a tricky timing. So you have to make sure that you're not trying to pinch in that C curve too soon or too late. So you kind of have to keep an eye on it, and that's kind of what I'm doing here as I'm cleaning up my stuff, kind of keeping an eye on it here. So now you can see that nail has gone to more of a matte look. It doesn't look shiny anymore. Now it is still soft, but it's more of that matte finish. So I can actually kind of feel that surface. It still feels just a little, not quite sticky, but I can feel just a little bit of, kind of a little, not, it's hard to describe, you guys, but it's not sticky, but it's not completely set. But I am kind of feeling this as we go, and it's starting to get almost a spongy feel to it. And usually at this point, I'm going to give it just a little bit longer, but I'm going to grab actually a couple of things here. I forgot I was going to use my Speed Clear again. So I'm going to grab my magic wand. And you guys, this is the same product or same tool that I was using to push back those cuticles and prep. But on the other end, it has a tool. So if you press in on the sides here, press in on the handle, it's going to open up that tool. And this is what we're going to use to pinch in our C curve. Okay, now before I do that, I'm going to open that up. I'm actually going to dip that into my acrylic powder. And the reason that I do this is kind of like, you guys, if you're bakers, if you know, making cakes, you flour the cake pan so that your batter doesn't stick or your cake doesn't stick. Same kind of thing with your magic wand. You want to make sure that you're having a little bit of that dusty surface so it's not going to stick too much to your product. Now, I am still kind of feeling this. The nail is still kind of soft and pliable. I want to make sure that I'm not pinching too soon where I'm going to dent that product, okay? So there is kind of a point where you have to pinch at that point, But if you go past that point, your product is going to be too set to be able to pinch, okay? So I'm tapping on that. I can hear a little bit of a click back here. That means my product back here has started to set. It's a little bit of a softer kind of a thud down here, and this is where my product is still a little bit more pliable, so I can pinch in a little bit more of that curve. Now you can see all I've done was I opened up that pincher, that magic wand, I put that right on that nail, and it is pinching in that C-curve all the way through the length of the nail. If you are doing a little bit more of maybe an almond shape or a more tapered coffin or a stiletto, it's not going to be able to pinch all the way down to the end. So what I can do there, or if I'm working on this nail as well, I can use my fingers to kind of pinch in a little bit more that way. So let me come in a little bit here. So you can see from the end, I'm going to use a little bit of pressure, and you can see I'm pinching in that C-curve just a little bit more. And the reason that I pinch that C-curve, first of all, for a visual, you know, I like to have my nails nice and tapered, nice and narrow, but do you see how much tighter that C-curve is going to be? That's why I pinch that nail, because your C-curve is going to give you structure to your nail. And if you don't pinch a C-curve, or if you don't have much of a C-curve, you're not going to have much shape or much structure, okay? So if you're able to sculpt the nail with a nice tight C-curve, you can definitely do that. If you're using these tips, they are nice and flexible, and you can pinch a little bit more of that C-curve in. Okay. Now, when you're working on a full set, you have to kind of keep an eye on your timing so that you're pinching one, or maybe you have your magic wand on this one, but then you're working on the next one, and then you work on the next one. When you're done with this one, it might be time to pinch this one, so then you take that magic wand and you move it to the next nail. So you're not just sculpting one nail at a time and pinching one nail at a time. You kind of have to get into your own routine and your own kind of rhythm to see what timing you're going to be pinching that nail, okay? All right, we've got our nail on there, we've got our tip on there, we've got our overlay on there, we've got our product is set. We are ready to file this out. So I'm going to grab my dust collector here one more time. We're going to get that in there. You guys, as I'm doing this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. The more you guys subscribe, the more free education we're able to bring to you. So hit that subscribe button, and we see you. I see you. Thank you so much for hitting that subscribe button, you guys. I love it. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to file out our nail, and I'm going to switch to my X-Cut carbide. Now, before we were using that safety bit, and the safety bit and the X-Cut carbide are basically the same bit. It's just that the safety bit has that rounded top, the X-Cut has that straight top, okay? So personal preference, you can use either one. I really like to use the X-Cut, especially if I need to work along my edges. I'm going to show you here in just a second. So I did turn my speed up to about 15,000 RPMs, and I'm going to use that bit right straight down along my sides here. Now you guys, because we already kind of pre-cut those edges, I don't have a ton of filing to do, but I still want to make sure everything is nice and straight. So I'm going to file straight down the left side. I'm going to push straight back on the right side. And then we're going to straighten out our free edge here. So I'm going to work from left to right on this. I'm going to use kind of the middle part, so right about in here. So I would say the middle to upper a little bit, upper part of the bit. So we're going to just come from the left to the right. And you guys, I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I'm just basically making contact and pulling that bit across. Now, could you do this to shorten the nail? Yep. So if I wanted to take down a little bit more of that length, I would use a little bit more pressure. I don't want to take down any of the length because I want our fun long nail here today. But if you are trying to shorten up, just use a little bit more pressure as you're pulling across, okay? Let's take a look, see if we got a little bit of a frayed edge under there. I'm just going to kind of tap that bit right up underneath there just to kind of get that little bit of a frayed edge. And I come in at just a slight angle. I'm not coming straight up in there, but just at a slight angle, and that's going to get those little kind of rough edges from around underneath there, okay? All right, if we need to, we can come from underneath and straighten out that lower arch. We did trim that a little bit, so we don't have a whole lot of filing to do here, but just making sure that that product and that extension is coming straight out from the natural nail. Same thing on that other side. We're going to just do a little bit of filing under here. But again, because we already trimmed that before we did our acrylic, we don't have a lot to file there. Okay. All right, we're going to come around our cuticle area. We're just going to thin and taper that cuticle area and around those edges. And then I'm going to work just down the center. So basically from the center out to my side, so towards myself. This is how I'm going to get that arch into the nail and get that proper arch placement. I'm not going to try to work all the way from side to side at this point. If your bit starts to go behind your product, see how it's kind of starting to disappear behind my product? A lot of times what can happen is it can actually catch on that client's finger and then it tends to wrap around. So we're just staying on the surface and pulling to the side. So top to the side, not all the way from side to side. Okay? To get all the way to that other side, let me readjust my camera here. So to get to that other side, we're going to look straight down the barrel. And then we're going to take down the bulk from this direction. So I'm just going to pull my bit towards myself, looking down the barrel. I can see exactly where my thickness is. And if I need to take down any more bulk, I'm kind of working more right through this area through here, kind of through my stress area. That tends to be my more bulky areas. And then my free edge tends to be a little bit thinner with the way I do apply my acrylic. So I just kind of work through that arch area or that stress area and then pull my bit all the way through, making sure everything is nice and even and nice and contoured all the way through that whole length. Especially when you're working on these longer nails, you guys, sometimes you have to kind of break it down into sections. So again, working maybe through this area and then pulling all the way through, okay? All right, let me turn this on the side one more time. A lot of times I go back and look from that side view again, just to make sure everything is still in that proper placement right where I want it. And I think we're looking good. So at this point, I am going to switch my bit one more time. Last time on the bits, you guys, I promise. But this time I'm going to go back to that sanding band. And this is kind of optional. You don't necessarily have to, but I like to. You could go right to your hand file if you want to at this point. But I like to switch to that sanding band, turn it down to about, I would say 7,000 to 8,000 RPMs. And then I can come all the way around those same areas that I was filing, really to just make sure that everything is a little bit more perfect, especially up around that cuticle area. Because sometimes I don't get as close as I would like to if I'm using either the X-Cut or the safety bit. So when I'm using that sanding band, I can get right up into that cuticle area, get that product nice and flush down to that natural nail so that there's not going to be any ledge or anything that the client is going to catch on. Okay? So again, we're going to go through all of those same motions. So right down my arch from the center of the nail out to the side. Then we're going to look down the barrel of the nail. We're going to clean that up a little bit. Again, contouring everything as best as we can. And you guys, as I'm working, I do work a little bit quicker, but I want to slow this down for you guys because I want you to understand that I'm not just keeping my bit on there and rubbing that back and forth. I'm actually coming through, picking up my bit, coming through, picking up my bit. And the reason that I do this, again, you guys, as I work, I do go a little quicker. But the reason that I pick up my bit every time is because that's going to help to avoid any heat, okay? If you have that bit on there and you're just kind of grinding away and scrubbing away, that's going to cause friction. I can actually feel on that nail right now, it's a little bit warm. So by coming through, picking up that bit, and then also working in different areas all the way through the nail, that's going to keep that nail nice and smooth, but it's also going to keep it from building up heat, okay? All right, I think we're good on that. Let me just grab that last little frayed edge underneath there. Yeah, we'll get that a little bit later. I'm going to go to my hand file now. And you guys, I'm going to grab a brand new file. And anytime I grab a brand new file, I always have my little prep file here. And this is just a different file. It was new at one point. Don't use your old used up files, but grab a new file. Always make sure that you're taking off that sharp edge of your file. And I go flat across the top, angle it just slightly to just barely catch that little bit of a corner on there. Angle the other way, catch that other corner. Same thing, turn that over to the other side, flat across the top, catch those corners. This way I know that my file is nice and smooth on the edges and I'm not going to cut my client. Okay. All right, we'll straighten out our sides here. And again, you guys, we did most of the filing with the electric file, and we also kind of trimmed off those edges prior to our application. So we really don't have a lot of cleanup to do, just kind of straightening everything out, okay? And if you're trying to do a square nail, you guys, make sure that you're holding that finger from both sides while you're shaping that. If you're not holding that nail, it's gonna wobble back and forth, and you're never gonna get that really nice straight square nail. So by holding that nail kind of steady, you're going to get a nice straight free edge. Okay, I'm going to turn on the side. I'm going to check my lower arches here, making sure that that extension is coming straight out. As my nail's going to slide off here. All right. So again, making sure that that extension's coming straight out from that finger. I'm going to turn over on the other side and come straight out from that finger. And you guys, I tend to put my pressure of my file, you can kind of see, let me come in a little closer. You can see where I'm filing. I'm filing right down here because there's a little frayed edge in there. I want to make sure that my product or my extension is coming straight out from that finger. If I just went in line with what's there, I'm going to end up filing at an angle and I'm going to cut into that corner. So by putting pressure more towards that free edge, I'm going to bring that free edge up a little bit, so that lower arch up just a little bit until that comes straight out from that natural nail. All right, straight out there. We're going to come up around our cuticle area, just kind of thin and taper that a little bit, up and around our sidewalls, because when we file straight on the edges here, we put kind of a square edge. Now we want to round out that edge. Okay, guys, if we take a look, let's see if you can kind of see. You can kind of see just barely. Let me over exaggerate this for you guys because I want you to see this. All right, so when we file straight on the edges, you can see that there's a straight edge here and there's kind of a little bit of a corner right here, and then it kind of comes up, rounded up on top. Now we want to make sure that we're rounding out that corner to give us a really nice contoured surface. Okay, so again, we're coming around here. Around that edge, rounding out that edge, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Around the cuticle area, and then around that edge, getting everything nice and tapered. Okay, I'm going to turn that look from kind of the side view. I'm going to balance with my fingers underneath here so I'm not putting too much pressure on that extension. And I'm just going to put pressure with my file right at the free edge, and I'm going to file backwards. So this way it's going to help kind of bevel out that free edge and thin and taper that free edge. So its free edge is now nice and thin. I don't know where that, there we go. Little frayed edge underneath there. Make sure we get that cleaned off. All right. Last thing I'm going to do for filing is I'm going to turn that client's finger around. And I'm going to check my sidewalls from this angle. I'm going to check all of my shaping from this angle, especially that free edge. Make sure that's nice and straight across. And then we're going to look backwards down the barrel. And I'm just going to flow my file as I'm filing all the way from one side, all the way up and over down to the other side. This is how I'm going to get a really nice, smooth extension. I don't have any lumps or bumps or high spots or low spots. And I'm going to kind of rock that finger up and down so that I can see all the way from my cuticle area all the way down to that extension. Sorry, I'm sliding my nail off here. So I can see all the way down to my free edge. So this way I can see any last high spots or low spots, and I can file those out and make sure everything is nice and even. All right, you guys, what do you think? Do you think this is something you can do? Do you think you can use that gel to put tips on? If you think so, or even if you just learned anything today, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, join our community, get free education, and let's go ahead and finish our nail. All right, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to grab my manicure brush. Those of you that know what time it is, go ahead and start that top coat chant in the chat. If you are new to our channel, usually about this time we do a little chant in the chat, and it's just top coat, top coat, top coat. But make sure you hit that subscribe button before you start the chant in the chat. All right, you guys, we dusted off that nail, got all of the dust cleaned off of there. I'm going to take a little bit of swipe, same swipe that I was using before, and we're going to cleanse that nail. Get all of that dust off of there, all of that stuff that we don't want on there, and I'm going to grab my protein bond one more time. We're going to add one coat of our protein bond, and this is going to help to adhere our top coat. So just giving kind of that, just that little extra added adhesion, just to make sure our top coat doesn't chip off. Most of the time, it's not going to have any kind of issues, but I always say, just like I said earlier, you guys, make sure that you're using your protein bond. When in doubt, protein bond, okay? Can't hurt. And then we'll finish our nail with my favorite. You guys know it's my favorite, is our Ultimate Finish Top Coat. And this is a nice, easy top coat to use because it is a tack-free. So once it is cured out, it's not going to have any tacky surface that you would need to cleanse off or anything like that. So one coat of this, it's going to go into the light for a full 60-second cure. It's going to come out of the light and it's going to be ready to go. So you don't have to worry about cleansing or anything like that. So let me get this into the light. And you guys, I'm just going to set that in there for, I would say maybe 30 seconds or so. That way you guys can see the final look and you don't have to wait the extra time. But do make sure that if you are using our Ultimate Finish Top Coat, it does need to go into the light for a full 60 seconds, okay? And again, you guys, as you're waiting here, make sure you hit that subscribe button or hit the like button. You guys, thank you for all of your comments in the chat. I see all of the love in the chat, and I very much appreciate all of that. I appreciate your positive energy. It makes everybody's life so much better. So keep up the positive energy, and let me show you our final look here. So again, you guys, we did this nail with a tip, with one of those XL square tips. So you guys can see a beautiful color blend, but mainly seeing how the tip was applied with our tip and jewel adhesive. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed our lesson today. Again, make sure to hit that subscribe button, join our community, and come and see us again. We usually go live here on YouTube 3 times a week, usually Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So join us next time. Set your notifications, and we'll see you guys back probably tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.